started with a phone call, a frantic voice on the other end, breathless, desperate. A woman sobbing, barely able to form a sentence. "It's him," she whispered. "I swear to God, it's him." The dispatcher tried to keep her calm, asked her to explain. But the only thing she kept repeating was a name that shouldn't have meant anything. A name that belonged to a man who had been dead for 6 years. By the time officers arrived, she was gone. The security cameras in the parking lot showed her pacing, shaking, staring toward the diner across the street. And then, as if realizing something she wasn't supposed to, she turned and ran. They found her car abandoned a mile away. But whatever had made her call the police that night, whatever had convinced her she'd just seen a dead man walking, was nowhere to be found. His name was Daniel Holt, a regular man by all accounts. Born in Indiana, raised in Ohio. Nothing remarkable about him. No criminal record, no history of mental illness, no known enemies. He worked as a freight supervisor at a shipping company, a job that required long hours but no real stress. Married at 27, divorced at 35. The kind of life that blends into the background, forgotten as soon as you look away, until he disappeared. It was April 14th, 2017, when Daniel's supervisor called his sister, Melissa Holt. He hadn't shown up for work in 3 days. No call, no excuse. His phone went straight to voicemail. Melissa wasn't worried at first. Daniel was the type to get lost in his own world, fixated on some new interest, tuning everything else out. But by the 4th day, concern settled into something heavier. She drove to his apartment. His car was still parked outside. Knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Still nothing. Finally, she used the spare key. Inside, nothing seemed wrong. The dishes were still in the sink from earlier that week. The TV remote was on the couch. His work boots were by the door. Everything was normal, except for one thing. Daniel was gone. No sign of struggle. No forced entry. No note. Just missing. The police weren't immediately concerned. Adults disappear all the time, sometimes willingly. But Melissa insisted. This wasn't like him. He was stable, predictable. Something was wrong. A missing persons report was filed. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. There were no leads, no witnesses, no security footage showing him leaving his apartment. It was as if Daniel Holt had simply walked off the edge of the earth. Then, 5 months later, they found his body. 5 months after Daniel Holt vanished, a fisherman spotted something tangled in the rocks along the Great Miami River. It was early morning, October 3rd, 2017. The man had been casting his line just beneath a bridge when he saw it. A shape, half submerged, caught between the stones. He thought it was an old bundle of clothing at first, maybe garbage washed downstream. But then he saw a hand, waterlogged, pale, motionless. By the time the police arrived, the body had been in the water too long for immediate identification. Decomposition had set in. The current had stripped away any wallet or ID. But one thing stood out, a small tattoo on the left forearm. A faded black compass, its edges blurred from years of sun exposure. Melissa was the one who confirmed it. That tattoo, she knew it well. Daniel had gotten it when he was 19, a nod to his love for maps and old navigation charts. It was him. Daniel Holt was dead. At least that's what everyone thought. The autopsy report stated the cause of death was undetermined. The coroner estimated the body had been in the river for at least 2 months, maybe longer. But there were no obvious signs of trauma, no gunshot wounds, no stab marks, no broken bones, no clear cause of death at all. A toxicology report came back negative for drugs or alcohol. There was nothing. The only certainty was this: Daniel had not died naturally. Something happened to him. The investigation, however, went nowhere. Without any clear evidence of foul play, the case was never classified as a homicide. Officially, the cause of death remained unknown. Theories emerged, but none held weight. Did he drown? Maybe. But where was he before that? And why wasn't there any water in his lungs? Did he overdose? Unlikely. Toxicology was clean. Was it suicide? No note. No history of depression. The police labeled it an unexplained death and closed the file. Melissa buried her brother on November 12, 2017. Friends and family mourned. Daniel Holt was gone. At least that's what they all believed. Then came the phone call. 6 years later, May 29, 2023, a 911 dispatcher in Louisville, Kentucky received a call from a woman, her voice shaking, her words frantic. She kept saying the same thing over and over again. "I saw him. Oh my God. I saw him. It's Daniel. He's alive." The 911 dispatcher tried to get more details, but the woman on the line could barely speak. Her words came in frantic bursts. "I swear to God, it was him. He looked right at me. No, I can't be wrong." Then the line went dead. When officers traced the call, it led them to a gas station payphone on the outskirts of Louisville, Kentucky. The surveillance cameras showed a woman stepping into the booth, shaking, gripping the receiver like her life depended on it. But before police could track her down, she was gone. She had left her car behind, keys still in the ignition, her wallet on the front seat. The gas station attendant didn't recognize her. She had come from somewhere else, and the only thing she had with her was a small notepad she had left behind, with 2 words written over and over again: Daniel Holt. The last confirmed sighting of Daniel Holt had been at his own funeral. But 6 years later, this woman was claiming she had just seen him in the flesh. Not in an old photograph, not in a dream, at a diner. A small, roadside diner just off the highway. The security footage from inside sent a chill through every investigator in the room. Because when they played the recording from May 29, 2023, at 9:46 p.m., there, sitting at the counter drinking a black coffee, was a man who looked exactly like Daniel Holt. Same jawline, same tired eyes, same compass tattoo on his left forearm. The tattoo he had when they pulled his dead body from the river. He had walked in alone. No disguise, no attempt to hide himself. The waitress who had served him that night remembered his strange, quiet demeanor. He didn't order food, didn't look at the menu. Just black coffee, nothing else. She tried to make small talk, but his answers were flat, distant. When she asked if he was passing through town, he hesitated. Then, in a low voice, he simply said, "I don't know." She thought he was homeless at first. His clothes were plain, almost outdated, like someone who had been off the grid for years. But his face was clean-shaven. His hands weren't dirty or calloused, as if he had been living somewhere safe, somewhere controlled. The woman who had called 911 that night had been sitting at the table across from him. She had watched him closely, her hand visibly shaking as she reached for her phone. She took one blurry photo before she ran out of the diner. By the time police arrived, the man was gone. He had left behind his coffee cup, half finished. A small napkin folded neatly beside it. And underneath it, written in smudged blue ink, was a single word: help. The blurry photo the woman took before she vanished was found on her phone. A grainy, low-resolution image of the man at the diner. Investigators zoomed in. The lighting was poor, but there was no mistaking it. It was Daniel Holt, or someone who looked exactly like him. The problem was, the woman who took the photo was now missing. Her name was Rebecca Lane, a 33-year-old schoolteacher from Cincinnati. No criminal record, no history of mental illness. She had driven to Louisville that night for reasons no one could explain. Her family said she hadn't been acting strangely. No paranoia, no signs of distress. But after that night at the diner, she was never seen again. Her abandoned car was found near the gas station. Wallet untouched, keys in the ignition, phone lying on the driver's seat. The last thing she had typed into her phone's notes app was, "I saw him. It's really him. But he's not the same." The police searched the diner's security footage again, frame by frame. Rebecca had been at the counter when she saw the man. Her breathing visibly changed. She covered her mouth, eyes wide, stiff as a board. The moment she took the photo, the man slowly turned his head toward her. His face was blank, expressionless. But it was his eyes that stood out. They weren't just empty. They were waiting, watching, like he had been expecting her to recognize him. She stood up so fast that her chair scraped loudly against the floor. That's when she bolted. She didn't even pay her bill. She ran out of the diner, across the parking lot, and straight to the gas station. That's where she made the 911 call. But what happened after? Why did she disappear? Detectives retraced her steps. They checked every nearby surveillance camera. But there was one gap in the footage. A 3-minute blind spot between the time Rebecca made the call and the moment police arrived. In those 3 minutes, she vanished. No witnesses, no struggle, just gone. And then came the message. Exactly 7 days later, Rebecca's mother woke up to a notification on her phone. An email. No subject, no sender, just a single video attachment. She opened it. The video was less than a minute long. The quality was poor, like it had been recorded on an old camcorder. It showed Rebecca, sitting in a dimly lit room. Her face was blank, her eyes dull, as if she wasn't fully there. She opened her mouth, but her voice was flat, monotone. "I was wrong," she said. "It's not him. Please stop looking." Then the video cut to black. Her mother called the police immediately, but the email was untraceable. No IP address, no digital footprint. The file deleted itself as soon as it was closed. It was as if it had never existed. And Rebecca? She was never found. For 6 years, everyone believed Daniel Holt was dead. Now, a woman who had seen him had disappeared without a trace. And the only clue left behind was a single word on a diner napkin. Help. But help from what? And why did Rebecca claim she was wrong? What had she really seen? 6 years ago, Daniel Holt died. At least that's what everyone believed. But then, a woman who claimed to have seen him alive disappeared without a trace. And the last thing she said? "I was wrong. It's not him. Please stop looking." But if it wasn't him, who or what was it? The case was cold, but never closed. Rebecca Lane's disappearance had triggered a deeper investigation into Daniel Holt's past. Detectives went back through every piece of evidence. They re-examined his death certificate, the autopsy reports, the coroner's statements. And that's when they found something that should have never been overlooked. The official autopsy report from 6 years ago was signed by the county coroner, Dr. Samuel Reed. But here's the problem. Dr. Reed had retired 2 years before Daniel was ever declared dead. His name had been forged, which meant there had never been an autopsy, no official body examination, no confirmed cause of death. Daniel Holt's death certificate was nothing more than a fabricated document. Someone, somewhere, had wanted the world to believe he was dead, and they had gone to great lengths to make sure no one questioned it. Detectives got a lead. A truck stop camera on the outskirts of Louisville had captured something unusual. Footage from 2 nights before Rebecca Lane vanished. At exactly 2:34 a.m., a black sedan pulled into the parking lot. A man stepped out. The footage was grainy, but his face was unmistakable. Daniel Holt, looking almost exactly as he had 6 years ago. Not older, not different, as if time had never touched him. He walked into the gas station, bought a pack of cigarettes, and left. But here's what made the footage even stranger. He wasn't alone. Standing next to him, leaning against the car, was a second man. A man who looked exactly like him. Same face, same height, same clothes. The gas station clerk who was working that night later told police, "I thought I was seeing double. It was weird as hell." They didn't talk. Not a single word. Just stood there, side by side, like they were waiting for something. 2 Daniels, side by side, neither of them speaking. Then, just before the car pulled away, the one standing outside turned to the camera and smiled. Investigators ran the plates on the black sedan. The registration was fake, but they traced the vehicle back to a warehouse just outside of town, a place that had been abandoned for years. But when officers broke down the door, what they found inside wasn't abandoned at all. The building had been used recently. There were fresh tire tracks on the concrete, cigarette butts on the floor, and on the far side of the room, something was propped against the wall. An old wooden chair. duct tape still wrapped around the armrests. Someone had been tied there, and beside the chair, something had been written on the floor in black marker. 3 words. He is awake. Rebecca Lane had seen something she wasn't meant to see. Something that shouldn't have been possible. And whatever it was, she had paid the price for it. The police never found her. And Daniel Holt? No trace of him or the man who looked exactly like him. His official case file still lists him as deceased. And yet, to this day, people still report seeing him. Always the same. Same clothes. Same face. Never older. Never different. Always watching. Waiting. As if he's looking for something. Or someone. And when they see him, they disappear. Just like Rebecca Lane. Just like the truth. Daniel Holt's story remains unsolved. Was he a victim of identity fraud? A government experiment? Or something far stranger? What do you think really happened? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more terrifying, real-life cases, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because some stories never die.